Hello and welcome to Clarkenomics. In this video, we're going to talk about an idea called market demand. But before we get to that, let's imagine a situation with one consumer looking at a basic demand curve. This is a consumer named Sarah, and what we're looking at is her demand for gasoline. So when the price per gallon of gas is $1, Sarah wants 30 gallons of gas. That's her quantity demanded. We can see that in two places. We can see it here, $1.30, and we can see it here, $1.30. So as the price of gasoline gets higher and higher and higher, going all the way up to 6, Sarah's quantity demanded gets smaller and smaller and smaller, going from 30 all the way down to 5. And from that information, we can set up this thing, which we call a demand curve, which is full of quantities demanded. But now what we're going to do is we're going to look at not just one consumer, we're going to look at an entire market of consumers. What is a market of consumers? Well, it's every consumer who wants this thing. They're a market participant. So for market demand, it might look like this. We have not just Sarah anymore, but we also have Frank and Nikki and Henry and whoever else is in this market. But let's just simplify things and imagine that the market for gasoline only has 4 consumers. So these are the only 4 people who buy gas. Otherwise, our table would be way too big. And from this information, we can calculate market demand. But real quick, if you look at this, you might notice something interesting that we're going to come back to. You might notice that they all have different numbers, right? Frank's demand schedule looks different than Sarah's did. Nikki's looks different than either of theirs, and Henry's is much different as well. So think about that and why that is in the back of your mind. But let's first calculate market demand. Market demand is very easy to figure out because market demand is just the sum of all of the consumer's quantity demanded. So at a price of $1 per gallon, Sarah wants 30 gallons, Frank wants 20, Nikki wants 35, Henry wants 60. That means the market demand is going to be 145 altogether. And we can take that point and we can plot it. So over here, $1 per gallon, follow it over, this is 145 right here. So that's the market demand at a price of $1. If gasoline costs $2 per gallon, Sarah wants 25, Frank wants 15, Nikki wants 30, Henry wants 45. Those numbers add up to 115. And so at that higher price, this shouldn't surprise anybody, the quantity demanded by the market of consumers is going to be lesser than it was before. And so we can go through this table, we can keep summing everything up. At $3 per gallon, the market quantity demanded rather, is $85. At $4 per gallon, the market quantity demanded is 65. At $5, 45, and at $6, 40. So a market demand curve looks very similar to an individual consumer's demand curve. The only difference is we're making it up of many consumers instead of just one. But now to answer our question from before, why might consumers react differently to changes in price? In other words, when the price goes from $1 to $2, Sarah buys 5 fewer gallons, Frank buys 5 fewer gallons, Nikki buys 5 fewer gallons, but Henry buys 15 fewer gallons, right? That's different for each consumer. This is all about a concept that we'll talk about later called price elasticity of demand. In other words, we're measuring how sensitive is a consumer to a change in price. Are they very sensitive? Like, do they really change their consumption behavior based on the price change? Or are they price insensitive? Do they kind of just like stick with it no matter what? And you'll also notice that even with that said, there are some points where the answer is different from these consumers. So looking at, for instance, Henry, when the price of gasoline rises from 1 to 2 to 3, Henry drops his consumption quite a bit. But at 4, 5, and 6, Henry buys the same amount of gasoline no matter what the price is, right? It stays the same. Same thing here for Nikki. $5 and $6, she's still buying 10. Frank is now down to 0 after the price rises to $5. So why might this be? Well, it might depend on some real world stuff, right? Maybe Frank has another way to get to work, for instance, right? So if the price of gas rises high enough, he'll just ride his bike or he'll take the bus or something. But a consumer like Henry maybe lives far away from work. And no matter what the price of gasoline is, he still has to get to work. So he's still going to buy 25 gallons, even if the price is $4, $5, or $6. It just kind of depends on the individual consumers. And so that's why this market demand curve has like kind of an unusual shape to it. So calculating market demand is pretty straightforward. All you have to know is just the sum of individual demand, and that because of something called elasticity, consumers in a market are all different types of people. Everybody gets a different utility from different products. So thank you for watching.